Auschwitz 70th anniversary, survivors mark camp liberation. Some 300 Auschwitz survivors have returned to the site of the Nazi death camp in southern Poland to mark 70 years since its liberation. Some 1.1 million people, the vast majority Jews, were killed there between 1940 and 1945, when advancing Soviet troops liberated it. Ceremonies are underway at the site in the presence of foreign dignitaries. It is expected to be the last major anniversary event survivors are able to attend in considerable numbers. Auschwitz was liberated on January 27, 1945. It opened as a museum in 1947. The ceremony began with a classical concert after which the survivors were applauded. Welcoming the visitors, Polish President Bronisław Komorowski said the Germans had made Poland a cemetery for Jews. Auschwitz survivor Halina Byronbaum, born in 1929, told the assembly that her greatest duty was to tell others how much people in the camps had wanted to live. "I lived my mother's dream to see the oppressor defeated," she said, condemning Holocaust denial and warning that anti-Semitism remained a threat. Earlier, wreaths were laid at the site as ceremonies took place in other parts of Europe and at Israel's Holocaust Museum, Yad Vashem. Jump media player help out of media player. Press enter to return or tap to continue. Aerial footage of Auschwitz-Birkenau today. Paula Lebovics, an 81-year-old survivor from Encino, California, told the AP news agency that she remembered how as a small, hungry girl of 11 she was lifted up by a Russian soldier who rocked her tenderly in his arms, tears coming to his eyes. She did not know who that soldier was, but she still felt enormous gratitude to him and the other Soviet soldiers, Ms. Lebovics said, adding, "They were our liberators." Renee Salt, 85, from North London, visited the camp for the first time 10 years ago and buried the ghosts, she told the BBC, and has been going back ever since. "I'll do it for as long as I can." Why? There are still a lot of Holocaust deniers the world over, and if we don't speak out, the world won't know what happened. In the Czech capital Prague, speakers of parliament from across the EU gathered with the European Jewish Congress to issue a declaration condemning anti-Semitism and hate crimes. The Prague Declaration urges zero tolerance and advocates fighting hate crimes through education, legislation, and law enforcement. Yuda Wadowski, 96, who is among the oldest survivors of the Auschwitz concentration camp, arrives for ceremonies at the Auschwitz-Birkenau site, January 27. Yuda Wadowski, 96, is among the oldest survivors of the Auschwitz attending the ceremonies. Dutch King Willem-Alexander, c. arrives at Auschwitz-Birkenau, January 27. Dutch King Willem-Alexander came for the ceremony in Poland. French President François Hollande, L., and Norwegian Nobel Committee Chairman Thorbjørn Jagland at the ceremony in Poland, January 27. French President François Hollande, L., and Norwegian Nobel Committee Chairman Thorbjørn Jagland are at the ceremony. Line. At the scene, Kevin Connolly, BBC News. Those who survived Auschwitz lived through one of the 20th century's worst acts of hatred and inhumanity. Many of those still alive today were children in 1945, but they are elderly now, and this may be the last significant anniversary where so many will gather. A huge, white temporary building has been erected over the brick railway buildings where many of the Jews of Europe were sorted into those who were fit enough for slave labor and those who would be taken straight to the gas chambers. Candles have been lit at the death wall where prisoners were executed, small points of light in this wintry landscape of snow and ice, where Europe is remembering a time of darkness. Bearing witness through drawing. Line. On Tuesday, the Russian Defense Ministry published what it said were archived documents about the liberation of Auschwitz. They include an account by Jen Kramnikov of the 60th Army of the 1st Ukrainian Front, whose soldiers opened the gates, about endless crowds of people leaving the death camp. They all look extremely exhausted, gray-haired old men, youths, women with young babies and teenagers, nearly all of them half naked, the general wrote. The first indications are that in Auschwitz hundreds of thousands of prisoners have been worked to death, burned or shot dead. Line. Auschwitz-Birkenau Death Camp. Watchtower at Auschwitz. Construction began in 1940 on site that grew to 40 square kilometers, 15 sq miles. About 1 million Jews were killed at the camp. Other victims included Roma, Gypsies, disabled people, homosexuals, dissidents, non-Jewish Poles, and Soviet prisoners. Life in the city of Auschwitz. Line. German President Joachim Gauck and French President François Hollande are among the national leaders traveling to Poland for the anniversary. But Russian President Vladimir Putin is not attending amid a row with Poland over the commemoration and linked to Russia's recent intervention in Ukraine. Instead, the Russian leader attended a commemoration at Moscow's Jewish Museum along with Russia's chief rabbi, Beryl Lazar. Russian President Vladimir Putin, left, attends ceremony in Moscow with Russia's chief rabbi, Beryl Lazar, January 27. Russian President Vladimir Putin, left, lit a candle at a ceremony in Moscow alongside Russia's chief rabbi, Beryl Lazar. Before leaving Paris, Mr. Hollande condemned the unbearable problem of contemporary anti-Semitism, telling Jews at a Holocaust memorial, "France is your homeland." He spoke after a Jewish group said the number of anti-Semitic acts recorded in France had doubled in 2014 to more than 850. Earlier this month, a Jewish supermarket was targeted during deadly attacks that shook the French capital. On the eve of the Auschwitz anniversary, German Chancellor Angela Merkel said it was a disgrace that Jews faced insults, threats, and violence. "We've got to fight anti-Semitism and all racism from the outset," she said at a memorial event in Berlin. "We've got to constantly be on guard to protect our freedom, democracy, and rule of law." The museum has long struggled to find funding for its upkeep, though the Auschwitz-Birkenau Foundation recently said it had almost reached its goal of raising an endowment of more than $150 million, £100 million, 134 euros.